If we think about sort of metrics, then I mean, there's obviously there's a debate these days that will go on forever, I guess, whether it be lead gen, demand gen, or whatever. But the most important number is the revenue number at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yep.
From some of the companies that you've worked with, and obviously right now in this next year, or this year as it's launched, revenue is going to be super, super important, as it always is, I guess. But what do you think teams should be thinking about in terms of metrics to focus on? How do you think that should be joined up with sales?
Yeah, I think about, there's a framework that I use that I call the AAA framework. And so what this is it allows you to zoom out from an obsession with like QLs and pipeline, which are very, very important. But again, when you're facing a recession, there's fewer people in the buying window. And so if you just obsess around the QLs and the pipeline, you'll kind of drive yourself crazy because you're just looking at the very end stage of a long process of a lot of people in aggregate, right? So the AAA framework that I use is like awareness, affinity, and acquisition. So that is just breaking down the black box of how do you get a QL? How do you build pipeline? Those are the leading indicators for those, right? So when you think about a recession, or when you think about how can I still add value, or how can I keep my business healthy during a recession, it's opening up the black box and identifying how you're performing against those metrics. That way there's things to improve even if people aren't buying. Your awareness is stuff like, your social following, page views, the things that we traditionally think of vanity metrics are actually very important. And I think more and more people are realizing that. So are you able to invest in those or increase those in a productive way? Your affinity metrics, which are like engagement, so newsletter subscribers, open rates to the things that you're sending people, things that show that people are coming back to you and are building trust and engagement. And then there's the acquisition metrics, which is like, QLs, how many demo requests did you send? So breaking it down into those three things and identifying where the greatest areas of improvement are and where you think you can make the most progress during a recession. Those are things that allow you to figure out, okay, what are some things we can measure other than QLs or pipeline, which we may have less control over. So instead of just throwing up your hands and say, it's going to be a bad quarter, at least now you have things under your control and things you can experiment against. It gives you a bit more agency around how to position yourself in a recession.
And is now the time to be a little bit more brutal with the pipeline, i.e. clearing out those deals that have stagnated and, perhaps just there kicking around and not likely to close?
Yeah. I mean, again, during a recession, there should be a lot of focus around sales hygiene and how you can improve that. And certainly a big part of it is, are you wasting time with people who are just not going to buy and you should not spend time with them? Or like, how can you position yourself so that when they are ready to buy again, they have a higher know, like, and trust factor with you, which is again like the affinity thing as I mentioned.
Makes sense. And keep an eye on sort of time to close as well. Do you think that's a metric that's worth keeping an eye on, bearing in mind sales cycles might be pushed out a bit?
You can monitor it, but I don't know if you have any influence as much as you would during normal times. At least not that I've seen. It's one of those things where it's like it's a lagging indicator. So I would rather focus on what are the things in my control that can influence that in a positive way. And typically it's things up the stack, like, again, acquisition, or are you even attracting the right ICP? Have you built enough trust with them when they were a lead in the system so that when they get to a sales conversation, they're already kind of educated, they already know what they're talking about?